Hello everyone, I'm Zeenat Firdaus. I have Dr. Sukant Khurana with me, who is a well-known entrepreneur, mentor, public speaker, and a scientist. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Zenat, for having me here.
So in the previous videos, we talked about tips and errors of English composition. But can you give any special notes for international students who want to hone up their English writing skills?
Absolutely. If English is not your first language, um, it requires special attention. So do pay emphasis, attention to what are the standard things. But since it's not your native language, you might want to do certain things slightly differently to outperform even native writers and speakers of English language. So first is understand the prompt. What is being asked of you? Is it a homework assignment? Is it a research paper? What is being asked of you? Don't deviate. I have faced this issue. I mean, I'm sort of in the mid zone, right? That I was born, brought up in India, and I spent most of my adult education and work in US, and then I came back to India. But where I was raised in India in the early years, I went to a school which had primarily, in the young age, not the middle and later. In the young age, I went to a school which had plenty of non-Indian kids of various ambassadors to India, and English became my first language in interacting with them. So I'm sort of in the mid zone, and then I realize when I'm in US, at times I write better than the so-called native speakers of English. Um, but when I've come back to India or in US, uh, students who applied to me, and later now as a CEO, when potential employees, trainees write to me, I see certain errors which are more uh, common to international students. And one of them is they don't get the prompt, what is being asked of them. So if you don't understand what is being asked of you and you go off on your tangent, your reader is bound to not pay too much attention to you, or just will be left scratching their head. And maybe metaphorically, your application will be in trash bin. I don't print out applications, so just means in the trash folder in my email, right? So if you don't get a prompt in your job, what is being asked of you, and you put in very hard work, because international students tend to work a lot harder and often they're not given the credit. I'll even take example of my PhD and then my first collaboration after PhD. Both the cases in PhD, almost five separate projects, which weren't really had much of my contribution to my boss, were eaten up by my boss at UT Austin in neuroscience lab. You know, and my boss told me, in fact, I would now reveal in some time, and it would be horrible for him and to understand how even one of the greatest countries in the world like US, you can have this exploitation. He told me, if you will start competing with me, he was afraid I would run my own lab and outcompete him. And he said that, and for him, it's not he says, me says. I recorded it and didn't say just once. So, but I realized as an international student, we, in any country, if you're an outsider, you're there trying to prove things. You often perform more, but you can take it very emotionally because you're trying to outperform the natives. And when you are outperforming the natives, you may just go on for days working on something and your prompt is something else. Like even for my PhD, the prompt should have been finish one research project, get it done, and move on. I finished seven, out of which five were eaten by my boss, right? So understand the prompt of 5 year prompt, understand a 5 minute prompt, understand the 5 hour prompt. What's expected of you? The less emotional you are, the more strategic you are, the more you're open to listening, the prompt will be obvious. So if you're an international student, whether you're coming from some African country to India, whether you're going from some African country, Asian country to USA, whether you're a Japanese student currently studying, let's say in UK, anywhere, pay attention to the prompt. That is the most important thing. Second, since English is not your native language, plan. Always plan, brainstorm, find a friend. It's always good to have at least one smart friend you can brainstorm things with. Organize your ideas, and your friend need not be physically in the same place. The friend can be across the ocean in your home country, because Zoom, Google Meet, all these things make it so much easier to have friendships, to have good relations without physically being in the same place. But brainstorm, organize your ideas, go over and over again, right? Thinking, rethinking helps. Shooting from the hip never helps. And um, the more I'm getting older, the more I'm running a bigger business, more I'm realizing the value of looking at the same thing from various angles. So it's not just planning from my side, how will it be taken by the other party who's receiving it? Always cite sources. Just because you know, don't assume others know. And for an international student, even becomes more obvious because your cultural context is not the same cultural context as your peers or as your bosses. In fact, when I use some context, it actually can confuse people a lot. So I have to often cite things more than others, because if I do some things in even casual conversation of things which appeal to me, which are science fiction, things out of biology, things out of physics or chemistry, will always already confuse people. And then there are things out of literature, not just English literature, Russian literature, which I'm fond of, translated in English. I don't read Russian, but some Indian literature from so many Indian languages that I've read, and you might know that I've traveled to almost all countries with rich biodiversity in search of new medicines. So I might have a lot of cultural reference of tribes that I've worked with. So often those cultural references are not known, but I might be an extreme example. But let's say you're from a small town in one place in South India, and you're going to some place in USA, let's say Chicago, and you're trying to explain certain things with your metaphors of food, and the food habits being entirely different, or being vastly different, not entirely, in Chicago versus, let's say, you're from Madurai in South India, Tamil Nadu, uh, your references will be vastly different unless you give a citation. So, as an international student, even if you're not writing a research paper, citation is important. Then, even for native speakers, writing a draft is important, but it becomes even more so relevant if you're an international student. Write a draft. Ernst Hemingway once said, first draft of anything is always crap. It's still useful. It's like having a plan before war. If you don't have one, you'll certainly lose. If you have one, you'll certainly not end up using it. You'll end up modifying it vastly, and that applies to startup also. Anyone who's followed the startup journey of Ioncure would know how many different turns, twists we have taken, right? But if we didn't have a plan, we would have sunk as a small startup like most do, while we are flourishing, and hopefully will make a bigger impact in the world than even Google has made. So you need to always have a plan, which is in writing, always have a draft. Make a strong thesis. Have a main argument. That's a very important thing. Don't make your writing as a multi-starrer Marvel Comics movie, right? Have it as a single star writing, which means there's one central theme, there's one equivalent, I mean, metaphorically, one protagonist of your story. So if you're writing a report on faulty construction of a bridge, don't start rambling on the road that connects to bridge or several other parameters which may show that you've done a lot of research on the adjoining, let's say, geographical region. That should be a by the way point. It should not kill your main message. So having a main message, having a strong thesis is vital. Then remember, I told you, understand your prompt, right? Respond to the prompt. So once you've worked out your kinks in a draft, respond to what was the original prompt. Relook at it. Read the message of your colleague, superior, junior, anyone that you're responding to in terms of your writing. The writing could even be four-line email, right? Nothing complicated. It could be a 500-page annual report of a company. It could be your thesis related to research, dissertation work. Respond to the prompt again, right? You're not just doing all of it and getting on with it. Read it again. Did you miss something? Okay. Then, lastly, proofread. Proofread far more often than would a native speaker of English do, so that your quality exceeds, not just matches, a native speaker. And that is often even required because of, unfortunately, the way world is, that as an immigrant you often have to outperform a native speaker for you to be considered at the same level. That's a part of the world not being fair. um, I'm not here to preach you how to make the world a better place or a fairer place. I'm here to teach you how to make your life better for your own self. And the way to do it is outperform by proofreading it multiple times over. Okay, these are my extra tips for international students.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering the question. And anyone who is interested in free training at Ioncure can apply at volunteer@ioncurerx.com. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.